Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about latitude and longitude, our second chapter. That our earth is round in shape. So when we want to study about the earth, always teachers used to show us a globe. A globe is a three-dimensional picture of the earth. As you can see here, a globe picture. It is a three-dimensional picture of the earth. In this globe you can see all the continents, different countries and the oceans, North Pole, South Pole, everything you can see on it. Because it is a three-dimensional picture of the earth. It is exactly how the earth looks like. The shape of the earth is round. The globe is also round in shape. Now let us learn what is an axis. An axis is an imaginary line which passes through the middle of the earth. In the picture you can see an axis line which passes through the middle of the earth. The earth rotates on it from west to east. Now let us see what is axis. Axis is an imaginary line passing through the center of the earth on which it rotates from west to east. Due to this rotation, we get a day and a night. As I said, we get a day and night due to the rotation of the earth. The area where we get the sunlight is day, and the area where the sunlight is not there, that is night. We learned that an axis is an imaginary line passing through the middle of the earth. This axis is not vertical. It is tilted 23.5 degree. This axis line has got two ends, that is the North Pole and the South Pole. In this picture you can see the two ends of the axis, that is the North Pole and the South Pole. Until now we have learned what is a globe axis. So let us just rewind. What is that? A globe is a three-dimensional picture of the earth. An axis is an imaginary line which passes through the middle of the earth on which it rotates west to east. That much we have learned. So now we are going to learn about, or we are going to divide the globe or the graph of the world into two parts. So with a line. In this picture, you can see a red line which goes through the middle of the earth. So it is exactly separate the North Pole and the South Pole with the equal distance. So this red line is known as equator. This equator line goes around the earth through the middle of the earth. So as you can see here, the red line, that is the equator. This equator line goes through the middle of the earth. So let us learn what is an equator. An imaginary line which goes round the earth and is equidistant from the pole is called the equator. What does it mean? This equator line is equal distance or equidistant from North Pole to South Pole. As we have divided the earth with equator, now we have two parts, North Pole side and the South Pole side. So this North Pole side is known as Northern Hemisphere. It is known as Northern Hemisphere, the top of the place. Here in this picture you can see this is North America, Africa, Europe, Asia, and all these places comes under Northern Hemisphere. This part, the top part, is known as Northern Hemisphere. So the bottom part is known as Southern Hemisphere. So with this equator, we have divided the earth into two parts, that is Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. So now we have two parts, Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. Now let us see the meaning of the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. The equator divides the earth into two equal parts, that is northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Northern hemisphere means the part from the equator up to the north pole is the northern hemisphere. Southern hemisphere means the part from the equator up to the south pole is the southern hemisphere. Now we go to our main part, that is latitude. Our name of the lesson or the topic is latitude and longitude. Now we are going to learn about latitude. In this picture, you can see many lines, and on the middle you can see it is written equator. We have learned, just now we have learned what is an equator. An equator is an imaginary line which divides the north pole and south pole with equidistance. So from this equator to the north pole or to the south pole, there are 90 lines are there, imaginary lines are there. These imaginary lines are at 1 degree each distance. 1 degree each distance, there are 90 lines are there from equator to the north pole as well as to the south pole. So in this picture 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 like that, I have given few lines here. So these lines are known as latitudes. In order to make you clear little more, and another picture is taken here. An image of an earth is given here. In this picture you can see equator with a red line, and the same way you can see different lines on the top and on the bottom also. These lines are known as latitude lines, latitudes. 90 lines are there from equator to the north pole, 90 lines are there from equator to the south pole. This is another picture now to make you understand. The middle one is at 0 degree. Equator is at 0 degree. It is a middle line. So equator is at 0 degree. So from this 0 degree to 90 degree, there are 90 lines. So this north pole and south pole contains 90 lines. So altogether we have 181 lines are there. 181 lines are there. So including this equator, it is 181 lines. So let us learn what is latitude. Latitude means the imaginary circular lines parallel to the equator running east to west around the globe is called latitudes or parallels of latitudes. As I said, these lines, the lines which goes around the earth like the equator, these lines are known as latitudes. This equator is the biggest latitude lines because it covers the middle of the earth and it is the biggest line of the latitudes. In this picture, on the right you can see the latitude lines, 181 lines. On the right side you can see. In the left side, I have written here north latitudes and south latitudes. It means from the equator to the north pole, 90 latitude lines are there. These latitude lines are known as north latitudes. From equator to the south pole, 90 lines are there. These 90 lines are known as south latitudes. So as I said, northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, this latitude is also divided north latitudes as well south latitudes. I hope you understood what does it mean. To the northern side, to the southern side, it is divided so that it has got a different name, that is north latitude and south latitude. We have learned about equator now. Equator is the biggest latitude lines. It is at 0 degree. It divides the earth into two parts like northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, like the different points, several points we have discussed now. Now let us learn which are the other important latitude lines. So in the picture you can see four important latitudes, four important latitude lines are given here. So let us discuss about it. First one, Tropic of Cancer. Second one, Tropic of Capricorn. Let us discuss about it. From the equator, 23 half north and south, a line is going on. That line is known as Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. From equator at an equidistance, that is 66 and a half degree north and south, and a line is going on. That line is known as Arctic Circle and Antarctic Circle. So these four lines from the equator at an equal distance, that is this Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn at equal distance, Arctic Circle and Antarctic Circle at an equal distance. So these are the important four latitude lines. Let us go through it once again. Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, that is 23 half north and south, Arctic Circle and Antarctic Circle, 66 and a half north and south. These are the four important other latitudes. We had discussed about the latitudes just now. These latitude lines were parallel to the equator. Now let us discuss about the longitudes, the line which connects the North Pole and the South Pole. In this picture, you can see the equator on the left side, which we had learned about the latitudes. On the right side, you can see the prime meridian, which connects the North Pole and the South Pole. Previous portion we had discussed that equator is at 0 degree. The same way in longitude, prime meridian is at 0 degree. It is the middle line which connects the North Pole and the South Pole. In this picture you can see 0 degree line which is known as prime meridian. This prime meridian goes through Greenwich near London, and this is the middle line of longitude. These longitude lines connect each other in the poles, that is in the North Pole and South Pole, because they start from the poles and that end in the other pole, that is North Pole to South Pole. Then this 0 degree line, that is prime meridian, divides the earth into two parts, that is eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere, same like the equator. When we learned about equator, we came to know that this equator divides the poles and northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, like that it is two parts. It was divided into two parts, that is northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. The same way here, this prime meridian divides the earth into eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere. Now let us see what is the meaning of longitude. Longitude means the imaginary semicircular lines joining the North Pole and South Pole are called the lines of longitudes or meridians of longitudes. That means the line which connects the North Pole and South Pole, they are known as longitudes. So we have already learned what is latitudes and longitudes. So in this picture, let us clearly understand what is longitudes and latitudes. The first one, longitude, the line which connects the North Pole and the South Pole. The line which connects the North Pole and the South Pole. The second one shows the latitudes which goes around the Earth. So these lines are imaginary lines. They are not real. They are imaginary lines. These geographers, they use these lines in order to find the location. For finding the location, they use these lines. This picture shows the longitudes and latitudes together. See, when these longitudes and latitudes comes together, this makes a grid. These latitudes and longitudes, when it comes together, this makes a grid. when we see the globe, we might have noticed that many grids are there. So I think you understood why I think that you understood why these grids are made on the globe, because they are latitudes and longitudes. As I said, equator is at a 0 degree, prime meridian is at a 0 degree. So these two lines, equator and prime meridian, they divide the earth, right? So here this picture shows that the first one shows that the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, that is the earth is divided like north pole and south pole, like that it is divided. And the second one shows eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere. So I think you understood by this picture the prime meridian and the equator, they divide the earth in such a way.